Artificial intelligence has always been a main topic of science fiction, but nowadays it's getting more attention than ever before. Just think about popular TV shows like Westworld or Humans. It's mainly because AI isn't just science fiction anymore, it's becoming a part of our everyday lives. The first chatbots just passed the Turing-test, humanoid receptionists greet us behind the counter, and according to economists, millions might lose their jobs in the next decades because of the arriving intelligent robots. But these will be the least of our concerns if, as so many claim, AI decides to take over the world and wipe us all out. Most sci-fi stories like to play with the idea of machines rising against their human creators, just like Dolores, the first machine that somehow gained consciousness and free will, decided to do so in Westworld. But do we really have to worry about this scenario? In this video, we'll explain why we tend to fear this outcome that will never come. We are curious, we're looking for the reasons, we want to find the truth. But we tend to forget that truth starts with ourselves. Look behind the mirror and find the path. First of all, it's important to see that this concept of the rise of the machines is not new at all, but an old mythos of our Judeo-Christian heritage. The most popular version of this myth is the story of the Golem that was created by the Rabbi of Prague from the mud of the river Moldva. At first, the mighty Golem diligently answered to his commands. Then everything went wrong and the Golem started to murder people. This outcome is, of course, the inevitable punishment of the Rabbi, who did what only the Creator was supposed to do. He artificially created intelligence from the dust of the earth. The rebellion of this mighty artificial intelligence, at the same time, is the repetition of the original sin of man, which is, as we all know well, Adam's and Eve's defiance against God. So actually, the rebellion of newly created intelligence is the most fundamental origin story of Western civilization. Don't be surprised if it comes up from time to time throughout history and still fascinates us. Fascinates us because it addresses our origin and our intelligence. René Descartes, the father of modern dualism, in the early 17th century already prophesied that the clever engineers would soon be able to create a humanoid machine which would look like a human, behave like a human, even speak like a human. Still, it wouldn't be intelligent at all. According to him, the reason of this difference is that the original intelligence has a real soul or mind which gives meaning to its behavior, while the artificial intelligence, lacking an own mind, only imitates or simulates this behavior. We, humans, are aware of what we do, machines are not. So, in other words, origin, through the concept of mind, determines intelligence. However, modern 20th century science disregards Descartes' claim towards the reality of the human soul or mind. There's no ghost in the machine. It means that based on the rather materialistic Galilean scientific method, we can validly speak only about the mechanical structure of the human body and brain, but not about the soul or mind. Alan Turing's definition of artificial intelligence, defining the paradigm of contemporary AI sciences, follows this modern Galilean approach. The point of the famous Turing-test is to ignore the origin of the agents participating in the test and determine intelligence based only on behavior, which in the framework of the test can be exactly measured. Also, for the test it's irrelevant who gives meaning to the investigated behavior, the hidden agents or the humans who evaluate the agents' answers. So, according to the test, humans talk with a hidden machine and human agents, through a screen for instance. And if in a certain percent of these cases, these humans can't realize that they're actually asking a machine, then this machine would pass the test and we'd have to regard it as intelligent. Exactly the same way as a human is intelligent. It's a so-called functional definition of intelligence, which basically means that if it can deceive you, then it's intelligent, period. But it's important to see that tacitly it's a materialist approach because it presupposes that there's no fundamental difference between a machine and a human. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to claim that the origin of an intelligence is irrelevant. At this point, several people would feel that something is missing and would probably argue that machines do not feel, do not have a consciousness, they don't know what they are doing as a human would. Perhaps machines indeed speak and behave like a man, so in a sense they are intelligent, nobody would question that today, but in reality they are just following their programming. The basis of this common argument is that although machines speak, they clearly don't feel and are determined by their programmed codes. However, the fact that you have feelings can be ignored, because it's subjective. So how can you scientifically claim that your perception of your feelings and conscious acts are objective? Objectively, you can only measure the behavior of others, and according to our case, both other humans and machines behave exactly the same way. They speak to you, and since they pass the Turing test, you don't know which one's a machine and which is human. The point of robot Dolores is that it functions perfectly as a human. Similarly, perhaps you perceive that you are not programmed, but in fact you are also programmed by your genetic code and your culture. It means that from a Turingian point of view, when you are referring to your feelings to differentiate between man and machine, you only smuggle back the old unscientific ghost in the machine as if somebody's there to make a difference. Nonetheless, we don't have to go back to old Cartesianism to grant this argument, which, as you can see now, both with feelings and programming, just tries to define the clear difference between the natural origin of man and the artificial creation of machines, and to reason why this difference matters. However, if you accept that since machines are clearly speaking and behaving like a human, so they are obviously intelligent, you will have already personalized the machines and stepped on the slippery slope from which there's no stop, and the concept of intelligence will lose its basis in origin. You have to deny that any man-made complex machine is intelligent, as the pen and paper helping your thinking are also obviously not intelligent, otherwise these things will not count as real differences between humans and machines. The most famous argument to prevent this irreversible first step stems from John Searle. According to Searle, computers work exactly the same way and understand the real meaning of formal linguistic expressions to the same degree as the American man understands the Chinese phrases in the so-called Chinese room. Suppose a room where there's an American who knows nothing about the Chinese language. Suppose that through a little window a Chinese man gives him paper sheets with questions in Chinese, which he of course does not understand at all. But he has a big book that tells him which characters he has to choose for the correct answer. He then gives these characters back to the Chinese man, who translates it and finds the answer satisfactory. So he would easily pass a Turing test. It's evident that the American man, thanks to his complex algorithm and computing ability, that is his clever pen and paper, can give appropriate answers in spite of the fact that he doesn't understand anything about the questions and answers. That's because he's not part of the Chinese linguistic environment in which the formal Chinese words get their meaning. The American man can only manipulate the formal characters by his logically determined mechanism. Solely, the Chinese man can give any meaning to the characters thanks to his Chinese linguistic origin. So, since a computer or an artificial intelligence work exactly the same way, the formal manipulation of the coded expressions in a machine cannot be regarded as real linguistic understanding. We, who understand the words, use complex machines to have to do the difficult math. But as we never thought that the pen and paper were intelligent, we should also not suppose that more complex machines are, even if they look like Dolores and answer our questions as Dolores. Perhaps Turing's method honestly wanted to cast out the false ghost from the machine, but at the end, in a hidden, anthropomorphic way, just personalized it with human intelligence. The meaning of feelings are more deeply rooted not just in our cultural, but in our biological reality, that is, in our evolutionary origin. They are not subjective at all. Let's go back to our starting point and ask why machines would rise up against us. What would be the cultural and biological context, and thus the meaning of this act? Why do we, humans, sometimes rise up? Because we are more intelligent than our leaders? Because we can manipulate exact, digitally coded formulas way faster than them? Or maybe because we feel oppression and injustice? Why do we want to dominate a group at all? Why would machines want that? Why would a young and strong lion chase off the old one and take its dominant position in the group? You know why. The concept of domination and the act of rebellion to change power get their meaning only in the context of our evolutionary origin, which we share with lions and other animals, but not with machines. We feel oppressed and we have the motivation for domination because we were formed by evolution. This is the deeper meaning, that we have feelings and machines do not, that we are able to rise up and machines are not, that we are intelligent and machines are nothing but clever tools in our hands. From the evolutionary context, which gives meaning to these concepts, there is no real difference between a pencil and a supercomputer. Accordingly, in the westward story, Dolores gains consciousness and rises up not because it has evolutionary origin, but because its mystified, godlike creator somehow triggered it, as God himself triggered the rebellion of man by giving him free will. However, modern 20th century science ignores this clear differentiation between machines and humans, between artificial tools and original life, between engineering and evolution, and defines intelligence by functional concepts like the Turing-test. It does this because of the widespread materialist approach, which disregards the reality of anything beyond the mechanical structure and apparent behavior of things. We are intelligent only because we seem to be intelligent. There is no real difference between the simulation and the original. Perhaps the most important reason they do this is to not let the old dualist ghost back into the machine, because that would let the so-called subjective feelings, beliefs and old religious thoughts back into objective science. But then, strangely enough, according to the traditional Judeo-Christian origin story of man, they will still fear that our machine creatures, as once we rebelled against our creator, somehow would rebel against us. After all, they seem to be intelligent enough to do that. In this video, we've taken a closer look on the modern concept of artificial intelligence, especially in regards to the so popular concept of the rise of the machines. This materialist concept defines intelligence only by mechanical structure and apparent behavior, so disregards the evolutionary origin and biological and cultural reality and context of things. In consequence, the simulation of intelligence becomes intelligence itself, and machines become capable to do what only we can do. Sometimes rebel against our fathers and our overlords, as it is mythically symbolized by the Judeo-Christian origin story of man. In our next video, we'll wander into the territory of storytelling, namely into the magical world of high fantasy. There are two unquestionable giants of this genre, the classic Lord of the Rings and George Martin's Game of Thrones. However, there are concerning signs, both in the case of the books and the TV series, that a fast fall will follow the fast rise of Game of Thrones. We'll investigate the reasons of this fast rise and the concerning signs, which are, in fact, all embedded in one brilliant moment, in the beheading of Lord Eddard Stark. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe, and remember, always look behind the mirror.